This is Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken, and John Lee is here as always with Sam Kastner and Joshua Morgan. Michael Black is on vacation this weekend, but we found a pretty suitable guest to fill his seat. It's DC United's Russell Canouse. Russell, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on, and super exciting that we've got a pretty nice Memorial Day weekend that we're enjoying here. But, you know, kind of just to start things off, obviously, as things are starting to open back up, it's been several months now that we've been living under quarantine conditions. How are you and the family holding up?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. This is a good question. Definitely, it's definitely been a tough time adjusting. Kind of everyone obviously experiencing the same thing. Some people still now getting back into maybe a normal daily life, not completely yet, but for us, it's been okay. My wife's still working through this. She's working at Innova Hospital, so she's been kind of sticking with her daily routine. For me, it's been adjusting, obviously, to training on my own and trying to maintain my fitness. So whenever we do get back, I can get back and be ready to go. Because it sounds like we're not going to have too much time to ramp it up. But yeah, we're doing good. We have our little puppy who's been keeping us busy as well. So everything's good from our side.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much to your wife for working on the front lines and, you know, really seeing us all through this. That was a great transition, though, because we did have a fan question of how's Lola the Frenchie doing?
Thanks, first of all. And Lola's good. She's living life. She's a lot of maintenance, I'll tell you that much. But with her like skin issues and stuff. But no, she's doing really well.
That's good to hear. We've been talking to a couple players and even some of the front office, and Fred's picked up some arts and crafts. I've seen him painting furniture, and Rory's been biking a lot. Have you picked up any non-soccer related hobbies in this quarantine?
I'm more so like business is one of my hobbies. So I'm always researching and doing a lot of stuff like that, reading a couple books. And I'm trying to get certified as a MAPS business coach, something on the side. But I mean, I know my wife and I, we did sand down some of our end tables and spray painting on black and stuff. So that was an interesting art piece, I guess we did on the side, which turned out really well. So.
That's awesome. Any book recommendations for us?
One of the books that I try to live my life by, and it's really kind of inspired me within my life and, the way I go about every day is The One Thing. I think it's written by Gary Keller, and there's another author that co-wrote it. But The One Thing, I recommend that book for sure.
All right, good to know. Thanks. I'll look it up.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been talking about a lot lately is having the Bundesliga back feels like we're starting to get more and more towards normal life, even though it's very, very different watching these games without fans in the stands. And we're seeing today that Fox has started to pipe in crowd noise and stuff. But you spent a lot of time in your early career in Germany. What's it been like, having the Bundesliga back? Have you been watching it? And yeah, what can you tell us about your experiences in Germany?
Yeah, so I lived in Hoffenheim was my club team I grew up with, and I actually was close to Heidelberg, which is a beautiful city. If anyone ever gets to go visit Germany, definitely recommend Heidelberg. That was my school. I took the train every morning, about half an hour to Heidelberg, and went to an international school there. So I have good memories from that time, and definitely think about it a lot. But I'm enjoying being back in the States and being closer to home and playing for DC United. It's awesome. So.
Yeah, well, we love seeing you rep the black and red. You were a really exciting signing for us, and then you've just kind of shown it on the field ever since. So obviously you came as that more defensive midfielder, and we've seen you transition to right back a little bit. What has that been like for you?
Yeah, that's something new. I mean, I've played right back probably 3 games out of my whole career. So I don't have too much experience, but I've actually really, tried to take it on and learn it. and do the best I can with it. I understand the game tactically pretty well, so I was able to adjust into it without really knowing the position much or playing in the position much. I was able to adjust that way. But I do like it. I do like the defensive side, you know, the one defending, building out of the back. I think it's also, try to play it a little bit differently, just taking up different positions on the field, sometimes in the 3-back, sometimes being the wide outside back, sometimes even stepping into a more midfield role. And we have kind of an interesting rotation going on that side. So it's been pretty good. Definitely new. And I'm actually using this downtime now to continue to work on, you know, what I can get better in that position. And, you know, for more specifically crossing and those types of things, right? Because I haven't done that. I've always been a guy who received the ball, turn, play the long ball, or whatever the pass, right? So just trying to use this downtime to get more comfortable in that position and get the reps.
We love to hear it, and it's interesting to us as well. When you're not serving in that role for DC United, you also serve as the MLS Player Association representative. Can you tell us a little bit about that process, how you were chosen, what does that entail, and if you've enjoyed it?
Yeah, so when I first got to DC, I wasn't involved too much because I didn't really know too much about the league rules. I had an idea, but I just didn't feel comfortable representing the team or even like stepping into a role like that yet. Also wanted to get to know my teammates more and each player individually. I'm obviously interested in business and involved in that in different aspects, and the team rep kind of has to take the role of the team, obviously in the leader sense, but also getting an idea of where every player stands at. Obviously we went through the collective bargaining agreement negotiation last year. So I have to be the guy that passes a lot of the information on to the team, gets kind of the sense of what they're thinking, and then going and voting on certain topics. We're going through something like that kind of right now with all the player cuts and, you know, possible return to play stuff. So it's a role I enjoy, being able to support the players and really move this league forward. And I'm super glad that I've had the opportunity to kind of move into that role with the team and represent our team well.
No, that's super exciting to hear, and sounds like a really cool opportunity to serve the whole team. You know, we've talked a lot on the show about, you know, what a return to play might look like, and, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of things that you can't talk about, but from your perspective, you know, when we get back to play, like, do you hope that that's something that, you know, we're able to do at least in the local cities and perhaps behind closed doors, or would you be interested in one of the tournament style things that's being thrown around? I mean, there's just so many variables to consider. I'm sure it's a lot.
Yeah. Look, I'll say this. I mean, everyone I've talked to wants to get back on the field, right? We make our money obviously playing, and we're not able to play, but it's more than that. That's what we love doing. We love playing. We love being competitive in that sense, and getting out in front of the fans even more specifically. Now we know that that's not really a possibility right now, and we can't see into the future of how long this will go on, but we do know, you know, we want to get back out and playing. Now, with that said, I think, you know, every guy does prefer playing in our own markets. That's plain and simple. I mean, that, you know, we don't love the idea of being away from families too often, but at the same time, we do know we need to figure out a way to get back and playing, and that's obviously an option that's on the table right now. There's a lot of things that need to go, I'll say, in the right direction, or need to be thought out even more than they have to make that work. The tournament style type things, but we all want to get back to playing, and that's the goal behind this, I think, from the league side and also from the player side. So if we can figure out a way to do that and get soccer back on TV and get the fans engaged more than just us being on our social media, then hopefully we can make that happen soon.
No, that's great to hear, and like we said at the beginning, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. And of course, we miss you guys, but we know that, you know, player safety and everything is of course the most important. From your perspective, when these games potentially return, if they do like a tournament style thing, do you have any thoughts of like would you want those games to count towards the regular season? Would you want it to be a one-off tournament with potentially like some sort of prize, or do you just want to hopefully get back to playing no matter what under the right conditions at some point? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think your last point was like getting back to playing under the right conditions. I think that's important. I mean, I think if we do a tournament style, it could possibly be counted towards this regular season, because obviously we all have the hope to play in our markets, and that's what we want to do, right? And have as most a normal season as possible. So I think just getting back to playing. I mean, you know, we're discussing a lot of different options with the league right now, and there's a lot of different opinions involved. And like I said, I just hope collectively we can kind of figure something out that is not just best for us, it's best for the fans, best for the league. It's, you know, obviously best for the players as well, and making the players feel comfortable in whatever situation we are put in, and the safety piece of it as well. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you. I agree. You know, we all obviously want you on the field, and it sounds like you, in your role as the player rep, you know, you really have kind of an elevated role in making that happen with DC United. So, you know, thank you for your work in that. But kind of looking off the field, you know, you've mentioned a little bit during this interview that you're really into business. You know, we all know that you recently got your license to sell houses. So, you know, looking into the future, potentially after a soccer career, you know, what are you thinking about?
I don't know. I mean, there's so many different avenues I could go. I just always am looking, you know, obviously ways to advance myself now from a business sense during my career, but also, I mean, I know my priority. My 100% focus is always going to be on soccer. What I do on the side is more of a hobby. But I mean, like you said, I got my license. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. I know I want to build my own real estate portfolio. So I know the least I can get out of that is to help myself on that side and just learn the business, because it's something I'm interested in. I'm also involved in some e-commerce stuff. So there's a whole different bunch of avenues I could go. I also, after my career, I do see myself possibly staying in soccer, whatever that may be, whatever role, whether it's coaching, the agency side of it. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to probably leave that open till the end of my career. I have hopefully years to be able to still play and think about all those things. But I'm always a guy that likes to plan ahead and make sure I have all my ducks in a line. And so when I get to that point, I can transition into it smoothly. And so a super tough question to answer right now, but definitely all the things I'm doing now are things I'm interested in, and I could see myself moving into afterwards. I'll say that.
We love to hear it, Russell. You're a bit of a fan favorite, so maybe a spot in the front office will open up for you when you're playing for your son.
Everything's open, man.
Yeah, we'd love to hear it. But our last question, this is something we do for every guest. We put you 30 seconds on the clock and give us your pitch for why we should get a Russell Canouse jersey.
Yeah, that's a tough one. All right. Well, first of all, if you get a Russell Canouse jersey and you show it to me, I'm definitely going to sign it. I love going after the games and really just thanking the fans. That's always been important to me. Growing up, coming down to DC to watch games at RFK, and now being able to play for that club and for the club I support as a kid is super, super awesome. So I always try to make sure I go around and say thank you to the fans, and the people with my jersey obviously will get a little bit more love because they went out there and spent their hard-earned money to get it. So, go get my jersey. I love the support, and I'm super blessed to have all the fans, not just the fans of my jersey. So, thank you guys. Thanks for having me on too.
No, that's a solid pitch, Russell, and thank you so much for taking the time. We know we've seen you come to the supporters section after a number of games and shake hands with a lot of us, and it does mean the world to us as fans. When players take the
even
time.
Though games that haven't gone well, those are the hardest ones to come over.
Hey, that's what matters the most, though, right?
But yep, awesome.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. That's DC United's Russell Canouse here on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken. we're going to throw it to break, and we'll break down what some of the Bundesliga actions look like this week, talk a bit more about the European leagues coming back, and maybe even dive into some MLS rumors about coming back. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Tried and True,
Thanks.
the DC United post-game podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes.
Can't listen to us live on YouTube? Fine, Tried and True, the DC United post-game podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, or Pocket Casts the morning after the match.
Tried and True, the DC United post-game podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 90 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening live. If you want to join the conversation, let us know what you think in real time using the chat on YouTube Live, on Twitter using the hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU, or text us at 202-892-6328.
Tried and True, the DC United post-game podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 60 seconds.
Let us know what you think between games on Twitter at hashtag TriedAndTrueDCU or email us at triedandtruedcu@gmail.com.
Tried and True, the DC United post-game podcast presented by Heineken. We'll be back in less than 30 seconds.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, go ahead and give us a follow on social media. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU. Again, that's Instagram or Twitter at TriedAndTrueDCU.
And we're back here on Tried and True, the DC United post-game podcast presented by Heineken. Great time talking to Russell Canouse there. Really revealing some insights into what's on the players' minds, at least, as we potentially return to action. And the plot thickens, really, when it comes to MLS coming back, right? I mean, it's so exciting to hear from the player perspective that they really want to get back out there. That's been consistent across the board, but we've talked about it before. There's just so many variables that you have to consider, and I'm glad that we're not in a position to have to do that. We just have to sit here and hope that it comes back soon.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the players are kind of in that position as well. You know, they're hoping it comes back soon. Obviously, you know, it's their lives and their livelihood. So it's a little bit probably more stressful for them. You know, the factors, you know, of going to Orlando, spending 10 weeks there, staying in the market, not being able to play for longer, you know, all those things obviously impact them a little more. But it sounds like, you know, there's a piece of them that are also like, oh, can we just get back on the field, man? Like, come on.
Yeah, and speaking of being back on the field, it was a bad week for all of our Bundesliga teams. Sam kind of sitting pretty without attached to a team yet, but boy, everybody took a dive. Schalke looked terrible this morning. Gladbach looked bad yesterday. Wolfsburg lost too. It's just not a good go.
Yeah, aren't you so glad to have soccer back and the misery that comes with it?
I'm just gonna join Team Chaos and hope like Dortmund beat Bayern and then they both bottle the rest of the season. I just hope craziness happens so that I get to watch, because Schalke are not fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm all in on Team Chaos, but you know, it was a home game, quote unquote, for Gladbach over the weekend, and just losing a big game at home. It just something felt right about like, that's my team, you know. That's but Tuesday is their Klassiker, Dortmund Bayern. It's in Dortmund. Not that it really matters, but that's at 12:30 Eastern. So extended lunch break, early happy hour, or whatever. But that's got to be the biggest game of the season at this point. Flipping at the standings right now, 4 points Bayern have on Dortmund. So if Dortmund can win, it's a 1 point title race. But if Bayern pull it off, it could be over.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. That's the derby over there. It's always one fans get up for, and it's kind of interesting. Today they had on the Fox channel piped fan noises, crowd noises into the game. So it'll definitely be missing for that game. I wonder if they'll pipe it in again. How do you feel about it, John?
Well, we said it was into the broadcast, right? It's not into the stadium, or
yeah, that's right. It's so I guess the world feed, which is what Fox continues to use instead of doing anything to try to enhance the viewing experience here in the U.S. They're just pulling the world feed. And I guess the Bundesliga added that option. So if you're pulling the world feed, you can either do it with or without crowd noise. I saw on Twitter that BT Sport, that has the Bundesliga rights in England, has opted not to do it thus far. And Fox, it sounds like, started it at some point either yesterday or today. It's weird. I mean, it sounds almost like you're playing FIFA, because there's no like real coherent like chanting or anything going on. It's just kind of like audible crowd noise. I have not been able to watch a game long enough to see if they like jack up the sound when a goal happens or anything to like try, or is it just like
no
ambient crowd noise?
Your left back belt's blown out of bounds and the crowd is still just cheering. There's no like negative feed for it all. It's kind of off-putting. So you just get scored on and the crowd's still just like raging.
Yeah, I mean, they did not have the crowd noise piped in yesterday during the Gladbach game, which was interesting because that's the stadium where they have like 15,000 like cardboard cutouts of the fans, and so there's no crowd noise there. But like every once in a while, it would be in a camera angle, and you're like, oh, there's a bunch of people down there, and then it's like, no, they're not. They're just cardboard cutouts. But then now, like the game that happens to be on right now, Cologne Dusseldorf, there's clearly no one in the stands, and yet you've got all of this crowd noise. So it's just weird.
Yeah, I think I saw an interview with one of the players too, and they were kind of saying that it was one of the players who played in that game, and they were saying that if you looked up for like a second or two and you weren't really like thinking about it, it felt like there were people there. So I know we're going to get to it in a little bit, but it'd be interesting, like if MLS decides to do that. I think they sold those little standouts, right? So fans had to buy them.
They did, yeah, and I think it was like €20, but a lot of the proceeds went to like helping first responders and fighting COVID and stuff. Like it wasn't like just a money making scheme for the team. Yeah, I'm very curious to see like if we play at Audi Field again. What does United do? Do we see some of the banners come back out? Do we see just total emptiness? Like, do they try to do anything? Because they got fancy at the end of last season, and unfortunately we didn't have any night games this year. But with like the goal celebrations with the lights and things, like that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I like the way the cutouts looked, and it was way better than like the Korean league that put like dolls in the stands.
Yeah, that's very, very weird.
But it looked kind of cool, and like Sam said, players said for a second it looked like there was actual people there. I would submit a picture for a cutout at Audi Field.
I would submit
Absolutely.
like 12 for some of my friends.
Yeah, I'm all in, especially if they're willing to give the money to the folks on the front lines and things like that. That was really cool, and also really cool. I was not aware that Russell Canouse's fiance, is a nurse. That was cool. I was not tracking that.
Yeah, same. So again, thank you to her for doing that work for us.
Absolutely. And so staying in Europe for the moment, the Premier League still can't get it together, but they're getting closer and closer to a mid-June restart, which would be nice. They had a bunch of tests last week, very, very low positive rates, which was good. And if they continue to do the social distancing thing, and hopefully it stays that way. But there was a report in the Daily Mail, so take it or leave it, that came out today that showed from a study there's basically no home field advantage without fans. And I think we talked a little bit about this last week, and I was surprised that they had to commission a report to come back with the data. But basically, it said that home teams winning games at home at almost a 50% rate. It was like upper 40s, and then when you remove fans, it's down to like 34%, which if you consider win-loss draw, that's like right down the middle. But the report, at least in the Daily Mail, was very much kind of designed to say all this bickering about neutral site versus games at the real stadiums. Like, does it really matter? And we talked a lot about that last week of like, yeah, I don't really think it matters. And it was just kind of timely to see that this morning.
Yeah, I normally choose to leave it as opposed to take it with the Daily Mail. And I kind of wonder where did they get what's the sample size for this study that he did? There's only been a couple of weeks of games without fans, and none of them have been in England, as far as I'm aware. So I don't know. I don't know where you get that from. And maybe they're right. Maybe the fans are the big factor with home field advantage, but I feel like there's so many other things that could contribute. I don't know.
Yeah, and travel being obviously a big one. That England a lot smaller than the U.S. and Germany and some other countries, but I think travel is definitely a variable as well. One of the things that's tangentially related to a return to play, N'Golo Kante, former Leicester City great, current Chelsea player, is planning to skip the return to play under the current circumstances due to concerns about coronavirus. And he was taking a lot of heat on Twitter, like seemingly everybody does with an opinion nowadays. But what's interesting about Kante is that his brother actually passed away due to a heart attack just before the World Cup, which was tragic. And N'Golo Kante himself has fainted in practice before due to heart conditions. So it's not surprising when you read, kind of a little bit more of their story that, he almost certainly is in a high-risk category, and you can't blame him for not wanting to, put himself in a situation like this.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I don't know of many players in the Bundesliga who decided not to play, but I've heard and, read a couple different accounts of English Premier League players saying that they would feel really uncomfortable playing. I don't remember who the player was, but I think that one of them had just had a baby who was having some health issues, and he was obviously very concerned about, exposing his child to anything that might affect his health. And, likewise, I haven't really seen a whole lot in MLS in regards to players deciding they're not going to play. That might be because there has not officially been a call to say like, okay, everyone is traveling to Orlando or everyone is, training in their markets. But I think it's bound to happen, right? I mean, I don't know. It's hard. This is their job, but it's also their health. And, can you really blame someone? All the three of us are working remote now. How would we feel if our bosses were like, you absolutely have to go into work or there will be consequences? Like, that doesn't feel fair. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes out as we keep going.
Yeah, that was Watford captain Troy Matthew-Denny who was talking about coming home to his son. And yeah, I think we just got to listen to Russell Canouse, a player rep for MLSPA, talk about it. And he seemed to put a lot of emphasis on it has to be the right scenario. So I wonder what the players want. Do they want to bring their families down to this maybe Orlando or whatever off-site location that they're all going to be playing at, or do they want to be going home every day? I don't know. It seems a pretty hard task to get all the players on board with one solution for this really serious problem. And I don't blame players at all for being afraid to come back. And as much of a difference a player like Conte would make, or we'll see what players in MLS feel the same way. You can't blame them in it. And I'm saddened that people on Twitter are coming after them, but that's just Twitter's a terrible place anyway. But man, it's going to be tough, and we'll see how this all shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, not all players have that option. Like we've already said, Russell's wife, she works in the healthcare system. She can't just up and leave, and you have players like Birnbaum, who just had a baby. Is he going to want her to travel? And then, Russell's wife just announced their pregnancy. So again, are you going to want to expose her to all these like potential diseases when it comes to travel? But then you also have the players who are single or living with other players. And, that's not that it affects them less so, but it definitely affects them differently. And they might not have that second thought of being with family because, they're already potentially living away from their family. So I don't know that it's going to be able to be a blanket statement, but then if Birnbaum's like, my wife and child have to come, our other players going to be like, well, that's another person who could expose it. Like there's just so much to this problem.
Yeah, so let's dive into the Disney plan again. We talked a little bit about it with Russell earlier, but there was a lot of reporting this week in The Athletic about what we could expect, what's likely coming forward, and obviously there's a lot still in motion, but the good news is for everybody that was concerned, there is a tagline already planned for this. It's they're going to apparently call the tournament MLS is back. So really put a lot of thought into that. I was hoping they would have played on, all the expansion teams and done MLS to Disney or something that, I've been trying to push from my social accounts, but apparently we've settled on MLS is back as potentially what the tournament would be called.
I don't think that's going to stop you.
It won't. It absolutely won't. But we did talk last week a lot about how these groups could be done, and it sounds like for the most part we nailed it. It sounds like the proposal right now, 4 groups, 6 teams in 3 of the groups. One Eastern Conference group would actually have 8 squads, so it's interesting. Nashville would be probably the first team to play in multiple conferences within the same season. They started in the West, and now they do in the East. Under this scenario is what we're hearing. So that would leave the East with 14 teams for 2020, and the West with 12. So it sounds like each team would play 5 games in sort of the round robin group stage type thing, which I don't know how that works for the larger 8-team group, but who knows. And then potentially the knockout rounds maybe don't count towards regular season standings, just the regular rounds do. I don't know if they've sorted all that out. But then the idea would be once this is done, we move back to some form of playing games in stadiums behind closed doors. Like we said, those 5 group stage games would count towards the standings, and then an unprecedented 9 teams from each conference would advance to the 2020 MLS playoffs, and we would potentially have an MLS Cup. So, guys, what are your thoughts?
I think we nailed it because this is the most common sense approach. I would like to think that our podcast normally goes with common sense, and I feel like this is the most fair thing they could have done. You're breaking teams down into the conferences, so that if we can go back to the regular season, and they seem pretty headstrong on coming back to a regular season in market, that you don't have to travel as far. So that's the reason Nashville is being moved over to the Eastern Conference, because it didn't make sense for them to be in the West anyway, but they did it for balancing. But that limits travel. So, and then you're just playing these games in Orlando instead of in your empty stadiums at home. And so for a regular season, it's just like a neutral site for these 5 games in your group. And then the tournament part is, I guess, just for fun or maybe for cash. It'll be interesting. I hope it's for a 4th
bid, maybe.
Designated player. I hope it's for a 4th designated player. You can just have a free player.
That'd be so interesting.
You get Daniel Sturridge if you win the tournament.
I was going to say, it has to be Sturridge,
though. But yeah, so that'll be fun. And I'll watch the group stages because that apparently now matters. And I was harping on that last week, that these games have to matter for fans and for players and for the league to have some integrity. But then I guess the tournament will just be fun, and I'll hopefully get to see how far DC United goes.
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously been very outspoken about this, and a lot of times it felt like on different sides to me all, but I think that this does make the best sense. And like the basis of my argument was that these games, need to mean something, but they don't need to mean everything. And that's what this feels like. It feels like they're going to be meaningful games, and they're going to count towards the regular season. And then we're going back to a regular season, and then the MLS Cup will still be separate. And like, obviously it's not going to look like it does every other season. But I think this is them trying their best to get back to as regular as possible, which, I appreciate. And it will be interesting to see, what these, tournament games mean in Orlando. I was reading something, and that was one of the Players Association's big things, is that they're going to go to Orlando for 10 weeks and not see their family and basically sit in a hotel room by themselves for an extended period of time. The games obviously have to mean something. They can't just be friendlies. But I think you're right. I think it's essentially just like playing at a neutral site, and, you're letting the entire country, that's giving everybody an additional 2+ months to calm down a little bit, in terms of like getting regulations in check. And, obviously if we're all going back to our cities, that's going to involve travel. Obviously, that's something that's going to have to be determined, because I'm sure that every player is not going to voluntarily, get on a commercial plane. So that might be, another thing that they're trying to navigate. But I do think that this is probably one of the best solutions that could have been come up with.
Yeah, and hopefully we get more and more details here in the coming weeks because, as we've said in many of these situations, time's of the essence here. You know, if they want to get a jump on training before games come back, and Russell alluded to that earlier of like, might not have a whole lot of time to get ramped up for games to start. But we mentioned there's a lot of players with concerns about this. I mean, Vela, Chicharito, and Nani have all kind of specifically said, like, we're not really a big fan of this idea. And I think it was an interview with Taylor Twellman, Alejandro Bedoyas, called being in Disney like being in a luxurious prison, which is quite damning to Disney. But I get what he's saying. You know, if you're trapped in a luxury resort for 2 months, the novelty's going to wear off real soon. You're going to start missing your family, right? And you can't go anywhere. So there's no question that this is going to be tough. I believe it's a report here from Jeff Reuter in The Athletic broke a ton of details down. So we'll share out that link. But basically got one of the proposals from the league that really comes down to all the numbers about testing and team delegations and all those things. Each club gets less than 50 people to go down. It specifically says between 45 and 47, which is really precise. And you've got to spend at least 5 calendar days in your club's market before traveling to Orlando. It does sound like anybody can leave. You just can't really come back, which we talked about before. But I think the most interesting thing from the fan perspective here is if this is a reality, it's hot in Orlando, like all summer long. And the league knows that. And so in order to try to avoid that problem, matches would be at either 8 p.m., 10:30 p.m., or 9 a.m., which is wild. That's going to feel just like getting up early to watch a European game at 9 a.m. But it does make sense. You'd be avoiding the hottest part of the day. But wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting thinking about, these are professional players who play their games at earliest at 12:30. So the last time that they probably woke up and went straight onto the pitch is like in high school, right? Like there's so much, players have such a routine of like their daily, even between like the mid games and the evening games, they have a set routine and they wake up and they do this and, they eat this and they stretch in this way. So suddenly asking players to wake up at 9 a.m., like, wow. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And I think at the end of the day, like, we're just acknowledging that this is a bigger ask of people. Like, their job is to play soccer, but this is a bigger ask of them. And, that'll be so interesting to see all the Instagram photos of people pillow fighting to get out of bed. Hey, we got a game going on.
As fans, we just got to shift our workday to 11 to 7. That way you can watch the early game, put in a full day's work, and then watch the 2 night games.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me that they would do something that early. It kind of seems like a little bit more emphasis on the international market. Maybe they feel like they can get the jump on that with the early games. If it were me, I'd do it like college football and start at prime time and go until 1 o'clock in the morning, because why not? The players can be up for that. And you're going to get the most of the U.S. market because, the West Coast is, 4 or 5 hours behind where most of the people here. So it's interesting to see. I wonder if they're going for that international market. We do have some friends from the UK that watch, and John, you've been over there and you say that, sometimes they turn it on as a joke, but maybe this is the chance to get that market a little bit.
Yeah, and it's almost certainly going to be Eastern Conference teams in that 9 a.m. window because you look at LA, Pacific time out there, that's 6 a.m. I mean, that's brutal for those fans. I'm sure they would say, what, we're not going to do that to them. But one of the more fascinating parts of this is that they could potentially secure these windows for 2-3 weeks straight on national TV, and you've got MLS on daily, whether that's ESPN, which would likely be the leader if it's at ESPN's Wide World of Sports, but we don't know what's going to happen with the Fox and Univision partnerships, but being able to have all these games potentially televised nationally would be huge for the league. And Sam, there is good news for you that did confirm that video review technology would be part of the setup in Orlando. So I know you were going to be potentially concerned that wouldn't happen, but they're gonna make sure that it's there.
You're a jerk. Man.
The only other thing that stuck out to me, guys, in here is that game day rosters would actually be up to 23 players instead of the normal 18. So just affording a little bit more flexibility, whether that's a positive test in the morning and you got to go down a person, or just playing so many games in such a short window. You know, you've got your five substitutes, so now you've got 12 spots on the bench to pull from.
I mean, we will use the subs. I don't know. We've talked to a bunch of the youth players, and they all tell us how they're being told to be patient. And this would be a big opportunity with 5 subs and then 23-man bench and games every day. That's literally what they do at the youth levels to get them up and ready. So I don't know. It'd be interesting. I would love to see Kevin Paredes tearing it up on ESPN.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I think my goodness, there's so many factors. I think we all talk about it off air, and then we get on here and, we try to be really technical and break it all down and, be really thorough. But my goodness, there's so many factors.
Yeah, and kind of a good segue here. Paul Bain on our YouTube channel just commented, we all want everyone to be safe, but we can't wait to get soccer back. And it sounds like the players are in the same boat. And like we said before, it's refreshing to hear that, the players are craving the return as much as we are. And, like Russell said, we just got to find out the right, safe way to make it happen. And we'll all be thrilled the day DC United kick off again. But in the meantime, we've been talking about it for a few weeks on the show. And we're almost set to launch our FIFA tournament. Big news is that Kevin Paredes is actually going to be able to play the winner live next Saturday. So the tournament will be taking place this week. We're going to drop the bracket here either tonight or tomorrow. We're just cleaning up the last couple things and making sure we got a nice even number of players. But boy, I almost don't want to win now because I don't want to lose 10-0 to Kevin.
Same. I know Joshua feels differently.
I don't know. He was talking about 10-0 against someone who didn't know the control. So, I mean, Kevin, if you're hearing this,
the trash talk has started.
Yeah. I'm here. We'll see. I think we got some good guys and girls in the tournament, and we'll see if we can give him a run for his money. He definitely talked up his game when he was on the show.
Yeah, it'll be, I don't know. It'll be fun. I don't play FIFA. It'll be fun.
Maybe we'll get him to play you just to see if you're better than Bill. Like, if you can keep it under 10, Sam, maybe.
That's funny. Oh, man, I'm probably embarrassing because it probably won't happen. Joshua and I play up consistently which buttons are pass buttons? I don't know if I would actually be better than Bill. I'm definitely going to have to practice up probably all day today.
We can put you on 2-button.
Pardon?
I said we could put you on 2-button. Have you played with 2-button?
What's 2-button?
It's like a game mode where there's only pass and shoot. You can't do any of that stuff.
Reduces the controls, but also makes it harder to do what you want in the game. So it's kind of a trade-off.
We'll see how it goes. I'll do all the practicing tonight and let y'all know.
Well, it's going to be a fun show next weekend as we sort out the details of how we're going to stream that and have a post-game show and see if our tournament winner can knock off Kevin. It's a lot of smack talk, so I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. You guys got anything else for this week?
I'm good. I'm glad to have soccer back. I'm glad to talk to people who are trying to get MLS back.
Yeah, I mean, I never would have thought we'd be in week 11 of this, but I appreciate that we're still trying to go strong, and a lot of our counterparts around DC United are still going strong, and I just appreciate chatting with them, and everyone's keeping morale up, and hopefully it'll be back sooner rather than later.
We're getting through it. So for everybody who's listening today, enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day weekend. Stay safe out there, and hopefully DC will be reopening into Phase 1 next week, which is super, super exciting. And we'll be back next week to break down the FIFA tournament. But for now, we'll throw it to Bobby Wine and call it a wrap. So thanks for joining us on Tried and True, the DC United postgame podcast presented by Heineken.
The bad news is that everyone is a potential victim. But the good news is that everyone is a potential solution. Sensitize the masses to sanitize. Keep a social distance and quarantine. Stop! The coronavirus regularly. Wash your hands, keep a distance from everyone. Report anything like a symptom. Serious fever is a symptom. Dry cough is a symptom. Walkway tamula is a symptom. Itchy eyes and flu is a symptom.
Everybody must be alert.